Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode as I adjust my camera of Communications and Cigars. Yes, we are back with actually a live episode. We try to get here as much as we can, but you know what? It's been busy ever since the first of the year. It's been super, super busy, but we are back. We are back tonight with kind of an interesting topic that is entitled, "Is that a radio on your belt, or are you just happy to see me?" What tonight we're going to actually go ahead and talk about is we're going to actually talk about one of the things I think that many people do not realize is such a key important thing when dealing with radios, and that is actually how to talk on them, especially when we start getting into this age of digital voices out there and stuff like that. A lot of people, I hear lots of people always say, "Oh, I can have a hard time hearing this, or I have this or this." So we're going to dive into that because I think it's a good refresher to kind of talk, think, and discuss about on there. And also I got some examples of their microphones and stuff like that to kind of show you common mistakes that I usually see, especially on the business and public safety side, which really cause a lot of issues on there. So, but welcome all to Communications Cigars, where of course we go ahead and we talk about communications, and we also talk a little bit about cigars. So not too much happening. We'll kind of dive into the cigar part right away. Not too much happening on the cigar front today, unfortunately, for this episode. I will go ahead and tell you this: if you are looking for a good cigar, and it's one of those situations where you don't have a lot of time for a nice cigar and you don't want to waste a cigar, I'm going to go ahead and tell people to look at the Cigarros. Kind of sort of like, and the reason I wanted to kind of bring this up was kind of a cool thing. And the cool thing is that my dad, I don't know if he's watching or not, or he does, but he's been lately on, it seems like an old Western kick, and not a super old Western kick like John Wayne or anything, but like a Clint Eastwood Western kick, and like A Fistful of Dollars and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, those kind of things like that. And what it is Clint Eastwood was always amazing because he had those little cigarros, and they're tiny little cigars. They are actually made from cigar wrappers, but these are the ones that are usually smaller leaves that are not, that get cut off a little bit, and a lot of places will actually take and roll those little cigars into there and kind of go from there. So that's a little bit about cigars tonight. Kind of, it's going to probably even be a little bit of a shorter show tonight even too on there. But with that, welcome to Communications Cigars. We are trying to be on Monday nights at 8 p.m. when available, or if not, we're not live. We actually will try to go ahead and put a little video out there or something like that on there tonight. However, do want to go ahead and say, hey, if you do want to get a cold in the show, if you have any comments, suggestions, ideas, questions, we've had a few people that have questions, especially after the last few episodes. We did the Nextel episode, we did the Zello episode. A lot of people were emailing back after that. Feel free to go ahead and email here. So communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. That's right, communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. That's right, JJK Communications is a sponsor of Communications and Cigars. They pay for all this kind of cool stuff that we can have here, and cameras and whatever. And in addition to that, they are a great resource if you are looking for any sort of two-way radio equipment. They do have used specials that they have every from time to time, or trade-ins that take place, and they do have a lot of different public safety, business, commercial, FRS, marine, those kind of options on there. So don't be afraid to visit them. Their website, of course, is jjkcom.com. So without further ado, I want to thank everybody. I see the chat's already filling up here and stuff like that. Thank you, because we did put out a little bit of a later notice today, and I didn't really know if I was going to have time to do a show today. So that's why I'm glad to see that there are a few people that jumped in. So starting down, good evening, Evan, Chuck, thank you for joining us. Liberty Cave, good evening also there too. One of our newer attendees, K8MRD. Yes, you are allowed in here. Lon, thank you for checking there. Scott, good evening. Hope you are still digging out of snow. Same thing, Phil, for you. Hope you're digging out of the snow there. And let's see who else is in there. And James, good evening for you too, James. So let's jump right into it. And tonight's episode, the pilot medic. We gotta acknowledge another medic in there. So tonight's episode, I was kind of like, what's a good topic that haven't discussed or talked about in a while? And what I started to notice and I started to do, I said, you know what? I said, here's a good topic. And I think the topic needs to hear how people use radios, because I was listening to the radio the other day, actually public safety radio. And when I was hearing the people talk on the public safety radio, I heard kind of something that was taking place. And I heard dispatch go, we're having a hard time hearing you. And I was like, well, shit, okay, yeah, I guess they were a little bit that. But other people were having issues and other people weren't having issues. And I started to think to myself, I started to put on my, of course, radio tech hat, because what easier way is it to do than to sit in an armchair quarterback, right? Right. So I started to look and I started to listen. I started to hear what's going on. And I said, you know what? I know what's going on. I know hands down what is going on. And you know what was going on? Is that the person really wasn't using their radio right, because they sounded different. They sounded not normal. And what happened was too, is it was being compounded because it was being on a digital format. So I started to go and think, and I'm thinking, you know, when I got into radio way back in the day, we didn't have digital to worry about, right? We just had scratchiness. You were scratchy into the system, right? And that's all we heard about it. We had scratchy into the system. So what I did was I went along and I started thinking, as we come digital, let's, looking at the aspect of digital. And I'm not just talking, I'm not talking a specific digital. I'm talking about, P25, DMR, Next Gen, Fusion, D-Star. That's pretty much about the main big ones on there. But taking a look at it, they all have vocoders, and those vocoders translate our analog audio, right, our normal voice, into ones and zeros and bits and pieces, and it's done by different things. It's either done using C4FM or 4FSK or whatever the case may be. Okay. But when I started to think about that, I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's kind of one of those things where it's going to be garbage into the vocoder. It's going to be garbage out. Yeah, it's data, and it's not bad data as like bit error rate bad data, but the audio sample coming in is going to be horrible, right? And I thought back into the days of, and I know everybody did this, you're listening to your favorite radio station, right? And you get a cassette tape and you're like, ooh, I like that song. Well, you're not going to go out and buy the single. Yes, they had cassette singles. But what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and put it in there, right? And you're going to wait, or you call the radio station, hey, can I hear this cool song? Right? And then you hit the record. But if your radio, boombox, whatever, yeah, I know I just dated myself, did not have a good signal, what did you do? You're like, oh, crap. The audio quality is going to be just complete crap, right? Just total crap. So I kind of think of, well, you know what? It's the same thing in a way of what we did with the cassette tapes. We're kind of doing with the radios, because if I have bad signal coming into this radio, meaning audio, it's gonna do what it can to get the signal out, right? But on the other end, that vocoder is only going to vocode what it can for the highest and best quality. And so I'm like, okay, this makes total sense, right? And then once again, you have other factors that tack onto it. Like, okay, you're going into repeater. Now, digital repeaters in essence are transparent. What I mean by transparent is it takes the data stream in and then puts it on a different frequency and sends it back out. They repackage it to agree. That's another thing here. So, all right. So what I started to do, and this actually comes from a long time ago, I started to look at how some of the deputies talk, how some of the firefighters talk, how some of the EMS workers talk. Because of my line of work, I can go ahead and do that, right? And then I started to go ahead and seeing like how amateur radio people talk, and listening to the different digital modes. I started to put this thing together, and I'm like, you know what? Is it really a bad form of digital? Is it really a bad radio? Or is it a bad user? And my conclusion, in my little theory and tests and everything like that, it is the user. And here's why it is the user. I've seen people use radios. I'll take this one here. Okay. Motorola radio. It's cool how it's actually a fluorescent green, but I guess the green screen doesn't mix with it. But I've had people go like this and talk with their hand is over the microphone. I've seen people that have gone ahead and they've talked like this, where it's like right up against it, like, hey, talking that there. I've seen people that have gone and have talked like, I can redo it, like this. Better yet, I love the microphone. Seen some cops do this where you got the microphone on the dash. Yeah, 10-4. And they're keying up on the dash down here. There's 10-4. Okay. So it's like, oh, or better yet, I love these people. These people talking on there on this. They have their hand over the microphone and they're putting it right up to there. Okay. And it was like, I'm seeing these people and I'm hearing them as they're talking, and I'm like, you idiot. It's like, you're the one causing the radio problems. All righty. Or then you have people which are talking real quiet into the radio, and not because they're like some secret squirrel crap, but because they're just like, they just have just this quiet little voice. And, you know, kind of equated to them of, anybody remember Police Academy movies? Remember, what was her name? Was it Hicks? Who's a little soft-spoken girl? Here you go. And then at the end, don't move, dirtbag. Hooks. Thank you there. Thank you, Kate. And I'm already Hooks, right? And I'm seeing people do that. I'm like, I'm talking to them face to face. They're nice and audio, but then they get on the radio and then they talk like this. I'm like, oh. So it's good to talk about this subject because, once again, things have changed. I'm going to point out some things on some radios to think about, okay? So first of all, I don't have my DMR radio here, so it's all kind of the same here. So first of all, I'm going to talk about kind of a concept of this. Newer radios and newer technology is always coming out better and better and better and better. We know if you listen to digital and do this on your own, have some fun, okay? Have some fun and experiment. Take a signal, take a radio, and especially if you can record. So have one radio recording and then take your other radio and talk into it and go through. It doesn't matter which digital mode you have, go through and talk in a nice quiet environment, and talk in an environment that has noise, and talk in an environment like next to a loud running machine of some sort, like a car engine or something, and then try all those different things. And what you're going to do is you're going to find out that a vocoder can only do so much. And then at one point in time, it goes ahead and it's like, okay, done, right? It's like, I can't do any more. I'm only able to process the signal that comes in. So what has happened is that a lot of the radio manufacturers out there, not all, but a lot, have decided to try to help balance that audio, okay? And one of the things that I'll do, and I'll point out Motorola, so here's an APX radio, okay? One of the things that I kind of find interesting that Motorola does, and I'll try to do it here, you can kind of see right by, trying to get it in there, but you see that little hole right there, up there? That is microphone 1. Microphone 2 is right there, okay? So what happens with it is that if I'm using it in this convention here, okay, where I'm using the front grill, okay, where I've seen a lot of people also too is we use it like this. When I'm using this convention, the cool part about this double microphone technology is that it tries to do a sampling of your audio. And what happens in that sampling of the audio, what's taking place is that it's going along and it's saying, hey, here's the deal, here's what's going on, is that I'm trying to get a sample of audio that I hear from the front microphone versus audio I hear from the back microphone. Now, what that does is that kind of balances out audio. It tries to sort of do like an AGC, so automatic gain control, tries to do all these kind of things, and it's a technology Motorola has in there and everything like that on there. But it kind of is interesting when it looks at that and looks at that aspect of it, because it's balancing the audio for you. Now, the nice thing about this is that if I'm holding it like this and I'm covering this microphone here and I want the push to talk button basically on this side of me, I still have the microphone here. It's still kind of capturing both as compared to having one microphone only on there. So what you tend to see, and what Motorola can get away with a little bit more than anything, is you got the people that take and they want to hold the radio like this. I don't know what this is. I want to hold the radio and put the hand here, okay? And then you kind of go ahead and have it right here and talk. It still's kind of sampling the two different kind of microphones on there. So that's kind of a cool technology in that regards. It kind of helps, does it? Now, I've seen that. I've seen a radio like this used on the fire service that has been right next to a loud compressor engine or something like that, and guess what it is? It's not causing an issue or anything like that, because it goes ahead and it balances it out. And like I see in the chat there, it says, noise canceling. Yeah, it kind of cancels out that noise for you, and it's truly amazing. But it's not remiss to go ahead and say it's the end all be all. It's not. Now, thank you to some of my producers. They were able to hand me my DMR radio here. Yes, I had the plastic on. This is actually a brand new DMR radio to me. I don't know if I'm going to keep it or not, but that's a different subject. But in that case now, you have only the one microphone here. You don't have technically a second microphone on it. Is that a big deal? Tomato, tomato. You know what I mean? On there. But when you start to look at radios that might have only one microphone on there, what you then start to see here is you start to see that the radios will develop. This is my little baby here. I really like this one. What you start to see is that now it can also come down to audio profiles. And when you have audio profiles, what's starting to happen in that case is that now you are able to go ahead and say, listen, here's the deal. I can set the profiles almost like not almost, but basically a graphic equalizer inside these radios. You can program it for flat audio in. If you have someone who is going to be a louder, deeper voice, you can adjust the treble versus the bass. You can adjust the actual audio gain of the microphone in there. Newer ones, I don't have my other Kenwood NX 5000s to me. Newer radios like the Kenwood that I have, that actually has different audio made profiles for you. There's even one in there which is like analog like, where it automatically adjusts it. Even though you're digital, it really kind of adjusts that audio on there. So now what you have going on is that maybe you don't have two microphones in this situation, but you do have the ability to almost have it like a graphic equalizer built into there. Okay, so kind of a cool thing on that. The other thing that you go ahead and do it on here, and you go ahead and use this one, is that you also want to look at the gain of the microphone audio. Now, gains are a fickle little bee, okay? And I say that because gain is such a... How do I want to say it? Gain is such a independent manufacturer decision, alrighty? And what I mean by that is I'll just take these two big ones here right now. So, Motorola versus E.F. Johnson Kenwood. This is technically Kenwood, but it says Kenwood on there, but E.F. Johnson's guts. It's like that old Tom Hanks thing. Sony guts, right? Sony guts, right? E.F. Johnson guts. But the reason I say that is because the gain in this radio that I could set through programming versus the gain in this radio that I could set through programming, completely different. Completely different, because gain will impact on the audio profile used on this one, where this, while it does have some audio profiling, gain can be set independent of the audio profiling. So you could have it that, okay, you know what, maybe the audio profile is adjusted for, basses, highs and lows and that kind of thing like that, but I always wanted a high gain on there. Another quirk or wrench into the works when you start to deal with a lot of these radios is, guess what? They all have the ability to have AGC. Now, the worst part about AGC when you're using a radio is that it's automatic gain control. And I'll tell you, kind of using AGC across different people is like a snowflake, okay? It's not going to work for the same person, okay? The same two people, it's not going to work. It's going to be, hey, this mic works for this one and this mic works for this one, setup, that kind of thing like that on there. But I also was kind of thinking, that's one thing. You can get around programming. But let's take a look at usage. Now, I probably will get shut off the internet somehow for saying this, but Amazon, you are an idiot. Oh, God, I see an Amazon commercial. And in that Amazon commercial, it had them using what I swear to God was a Baofeng. But the radio, in essence, was down like this, okay? I can't it was in there. The radio was clipped onto his vest, and the antenna's pointing down. And I'm like, okay, well, great, hey, great, way to go ahead and do it. And I know some people say, oh, you don't want the antenna up because, you turn and you're going to get poked in the eye. Okay, one, use a smaller antenna, or two, wear the radio lower. But this whole I'm going to wear the radio down here and the antenna pointing down. That doesn't work, folks. Okay, that doesn't work at all, because guess what's happening is that antenna's pointing down, it's touching close to your body. Your body is going to act like a shield. Okay, if you've ever done fox hunting, okay, or you want to do kind of interesting, even take your scanner, right? Take off the antenna. I can't. Jesus Christ, did I glue that on? All right, take off your antenna and just take, even like I said, even a scanner. Okay, I'll drop my O-ring. Okay, and do this next time. Just take something to short out. No, I'm not saying transmit now, but just something to short out the SMA connector, the center pin against there. And you can do that, and you'll hear it. And what'll be the interesting part about it is that if you're receiving a faraway station like this, you would receive it, but as you turn away, guess what happens? That signal is going to decrease, or it's going to go away. Why? Thank goodness you asked. Because guess what? Your body acts like a giant RF shield, right? Your body absorbs energy, okay? And your body absorbs energy. It does. So it acts as an RF shield. In that case, guess what? Having a radio pushed up against your body does not do good. And I see this a lot. And I had an incident where there was a deputy who was on a call with me. He was in the back of our ambulance, okay? He was wearing his vest and he had his radio. You can't see it, but he had his radio like underneath his armpit, like kind of here. That's where he had it. So he had it like across his chest and then there. So you kind of see where that, here, I'll move it over here. But his antenna was for the most part like down here by his armpit. And then what ended up happening is he's trying to talk on the radio, and we were monitoring the channel in the ambulance. So I kind of turned it down a little bit, and he's talking and he was like, da 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 da, dispatch. And all of a sudden on the radio there, I could hear it wasn't coming through. Well, guess what? He had the radio down here so that the antenna was kind of tucked in his armpit or tucked right to his chest. And guess what? That's not going to go ahead and work either. He has that too close. And then what he had to do is he's like, ah, and then he raised it up in the air and he's like, da 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 da, dispatch, go ahead, da 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 da. And he's like, stupid radios don't work. But it's not the radio's fault. It's kind of your fault. No offense. Okay. Another thing also too, when we're talking about using radios, and go ahead and use microphones properly. Okay. Just like when you're talking about the radio, don't put your hand over it. Okay. Don't go ahead and, have it if you can, obviously, head height, about 6 inches away. So what I usually do is I take my thumb to my finger and I kind of do it like this because that's about roughly 6 inches away. So I will take and I will hold the radio here like this. It's always going to be better when you're talking and using your radio to actually be able to hold it up. Yes. Do some people have it on their hip? Yes. Do I carry it on my hip? Yes. Okay. When I'm on duty for EMS stuff. But here's the difference. Next phase is going to come into antennas. Alrighty. If you're going to wear it on your hip, if you're going to go ahead and have it possibly tucked into your armpit or something like that, you got to have a better antenna. And for the most part, try not to have it against your body. When I'm on duty, I have an antenna that is designed to be a high gain antenna. This, believe it or not, is actually a VHF antenna. That's what I take all my antennas that are VHF and I put a red sticker on them or anything like that. As a matter of fact, this is a wide cut antenna. Actually, it's dual band. I take that back. I'm sorry. 136, 174, and roughly 420 to 470, right? So I have it on there because it is a high gain antenna in its design and concept. As a matter of fact, I've used a little nano VNA and I've tested it and it actually does work pretty well on there. But I know I'm going to wear this on my hip in a holster and the antenna's a little bit away from my body. I would probably say here you go, like that far away. But I know that I have it in my holster there, that high gain antenna is probably going to be the equivalent if I was using a stock antenna and holding it up here. It's a trade-off. You gotta know. Okay, you do have to know. You do have to have some things like that common in your mind. But nevertheless, it does help offset that factor. I've been in some places though, even on my hip, it doesn't work, and I've had to do the old hold it above your head because guess what? It just didn't work on there. That's fine if you got to do that, but think of where your antenna's at. Think of what's going on there. The last thing, kind of to talk about, the handhelds. When you're doing that is, do you talk into the radio or do you talk across the radio? And I'll be honest with you, the conditions you're in is going to really have a giant effect on there. There have been times where I am in a noisy environment or something like that, where I will need to talk into the radio versus kind of talking across the radio. If I'm in a quieter environment, sometimes I can get away with that, but it all depends on where you're at, the situation going on. That's going to be one of the biggest factors. Now, let's move on to speaker mics real quick here. And do I have a speaker mic close by? I bet I don't. All right, speaker mics. Let's assume that this mobile mic is a speaker mic, okay? You got your speaker mic up here, right? Here's what I see so many people do. Yeah, go ahead. It doesn't work, okay? It really doesn't work. What you need to do in these cases is you would need to turn and look down and talk into your speaker microphone. That's going to be the best. Or what I will tend to do is I actually wear, and you can't really see because of my camera, but I actually have on my uniform, I actually have right in the center of the chest, right where they're going to do CPR on me, I have my speaker microphone, okay? Right, just kind of a little bit below my body cam area. And what I do is I can lift up the microphone and I can talk down into this here. Now what that does, it's a little bit less of a distance than I normally would per se hold my radio. But what I can do is I can lean down, I can talk into it, and I can be heard comfortably. And it's not that hard for me to do that motion. I'm not turning my head here and everything like that. I can easily lift up and lift my head down and then take a look at it. So that is kind of some of the things to do it. Once again, mobiles are the same thing. Don't cover your hand. I see people that will do this. They'll take and they'll put their finger like this so that they have a little bit of a gap, and they'll talk like this on there. When you're talking like this, close by or not across the device and stuff like that, you're going to be having a lot of problems. You're just going to. It's going to sound muffled. It's going to sound this. And you know what the thing about it is that so many people experience this. We just get upset and just blame it on things, right? We don't take the time to investigate the cause. Am I using it correctly or am I not? And that's kind of something to keep and think about in your mind when using or talking with or using through a radio here. But also, too, on that subject, it brings it up for this week's, really bends my antenna. You know what really bends my antenna? Me doing this. But also what really bends my antenna is that we've become lax in radio discipline, that we are more apt to go ahead and blame everything else underneath the sun for an issue as compared to saying, this is what the issue is. Have you done this? Alrighty. And you know who I fault a lot? You dispatchers. Okay, you dispatchers, you guys have the key to the system in essence, right? I was a former dispatcher. I wasn't afraid to go ahead and saying, hey, be advised your audio is really quiet, or be advised your audio is really loud, okay? They are talking on their radio, whether it be police, fire, EMS, public works, business people and stuff like that. The minute I hear someone going ahead and instantly saying, hey, this audio sounds crap, or this, or it's too loud, or I go ahead and I ask, hey, okay, did you go ahead and check it, or how are you using it? Okay, because the thing is that we don't even use logic when it comes to these audio issues or using a radio. You know what we'll do? One person out of 10 can have a radio issue because their audio is too low or too quiet or too muffled or whatever the case may be. And guess what the hell they do? They go ahead and they blame the system or they blame the radio product. Hey, how about you take that one person who seems to be dicking things up on the radio and say, hey, you're muffled, or can you speak up, or can you... No one wants to hurt anybody's feelings, okay? I don't know if this is the new woke of the radio world or something like that on there, but I'll tell you what, it's going to come down to proper radio usage, and that's what you really, really need to know and really be able to do on a discipline. I've heard many times in the amateur world, yes, people are like, I can tell when this person's on a cheap Chinese radio because they sound too loud. Okay, you know what I don't hear after a person go ahead and say that? Your audio's a little loud. Can you maybe back off the microphone a little bit or something like that? Okay. Help people know. Okay. Like I said, even between well, you know what? I'll even go one step deeper. Between these three radios right here, they all have different audio settings. That, guess what? take a while for me to kind of tweak down as being able to program them. Excuse me. And say, okay, I know on this radio, I got to adjust the audio gain separate from the audio profile. Excuse me. I know on this radio, guess what? The audio profile has all the gain, flat, treble, and all that kind of stuff in there. I know on this one, hey, guess what? I need to make sure I have compression on or expansion on or turned on or whatever the case may be on there. But we are so quick to blame someone else or something else instead of saying, you know what? Am I using my radio correctly on there? Because I will tell you, 9 times out of 10, and I will say 9 times out of 10, radio usage is going to be your bane of the existence for why you're having bad audio, why people are having a hard time hearing you. That other 1 out of 10 I tend to see is usually related to bad equipment or something like that. Like maybe you got a bad antenna, so you're not transmitting well. Or maybe you got a bad speaker microphone. Or maybe, you know, the multi-port connection is a little dirty on the side there or something as an example on there. Or maybe the speaker mic isn't setting properly. That's that small percentage. But the majority of time is people not using the system, or I shouldn't say the system, but the radio equipment properly than it is on the system. A system, I don't give a shit what you're using, sorry, but whether you're using like a local device, whether you're using it to a base station, whether you're using it through a repeater, whether you're using it in a simulcast system, whether you're using it on a trunked radio network, whatever the case may be, whatever you're using, the system is going to be tuned for a standard. It's going to be tuned here, like a certain standard audio level, to try to help the highs, to try to help the lows. It's not going to be all over the place, all right? It's not going to instantly go out and be like, oh, Susie's using the radio today, let me adjust for her. And oh, David's using the radio today, so let me adjust to David. No, it's not going to do that. It's not going to do that. No, it's not. Okay? But the radios are going to be set up to be middle grade and middle across the line. And guess what ends up happening in that part? Then the rest is going to come down on you to make sure that you're using it correctly. And then in addition to you using it correctly, it's also going to have to come down to making sure that your equipment is set up correctly on there. So that's this week's really, you know what bends my antenna? So thank you to everybody that did tune in for this week's episode. Thank you very much for doing it. We're gonna try to get back into now kind of things on here. I am gonna be traveling for one of my other hats that I do wear on there, but we hopefully have some of the other episodes coming up here and stuff. And we will be working. I would say we're working on a podcast. We truly are. We truly are working on a podcast. We just, you know, when you do a podcast, you got to have your fact checkers, and then you got to make sure that the stuff that you're talking about is okay to talk about, or more importantly, that you can reference and cite things, because these days, I don't know, everybody, you know, you just work on this topic and then all of a sudden it gets shut down because you didn't cite the right article or whatever the case may be. So more stuff is coming around. But until then, everybody take care. Enjoy yourselves, stay safe. Springtime is coming here, especially if you live in upper Midwest here with the snow, actually anywhere of the northern United States with the snow. And guess what's going to happen? Once nice weather comes around, we can get out and we can go play on radio towers and play with radio systems and all that fun stuff like that. But until then, if you have some cigars, sit back, enjoy them. Take care, everybody.